So let us begin. Mental health is more than the absence of illness. It is a state of balance and flow. Well-being is the main source of our vitality and our engagement with life in creative and resilient ways. This workshop will introduce emotional intelligence as an empowering tool for understanding your needs and responding to them in a compassionate way. Focusing on the three areas of mind, relationships, and work, this workshop will offer you strategies that you can use in your daily life for stress management, empathy, and well-being. Our guest speaker today is Bianca Briciu, who will be speaking about this important topic. Bianca is an assistant professor at the School of Transformative Leadership and Spirituality, St. Paul University. She teaches courses in emotional and spiritual intelligence, positive psychology, mindfulness, and leadership. Bianca is also a certified coach in emotional intelligence and the founder of Emotional Balance. Her passion is to help people to integrate intellect and emotions in order to experience well-being, wisdom, and compassion. So, welcome, Bianca. We are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Dushan, for your beautiful introduction. And I want to say that it's such an honor and pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited about the initiative that you're having to create opportunities for people to discover various aspects of mental health, and to do that in this context. So I want to thank you for your invitation. And
thank you, Bianca. Such a pleasure.
I will start sharing my presentation, and hopefully we will go through some interesting insights today. I'm going to start with this very brief self-introduction, just to add a few more words to what Dushan was saying. I'm an assistant professor at St. Paul University, and I'm also a certified coach in emotional intelligence. You may have heard about emotional intelligence in various contexts. Now, some of the advantages of coaching is that it's way cheaper than counseling in a way, so that would probably be the main advantage. But another advantage is that it's supposed to empower people with tools that they can use themselves in order to work with the self-awareness, with knowing themselves a bit more in the company of another person, the coach. So I have this website, Emotional Balance. You're welcome to check the website or connect with me after the presentation, or with whatever issues you have on your mind right now, and I will be very happy to connect with you. So my sort of a big motto on the website is transform your mind, transform your life. And this is something that I will address in today's presentation, because especially in very stressful situations like the one that we are experiencing right now, we feel quite powerless. And as we feel powerless, we need to find resources in order to address that sense of powerlessness. And we do have the ability to create different ways of responding to the difficulties of life. We cannot change the virus. We cannot influence the state of the world as it is right now, but we can influence our responses. And starting from there, we will slowly feel more empowered to also connect to others and maybe respond in certain ways to the state of the world. So I'm going to start with a very broad definition of mental health, because for a lot of people, healthy means the absence of illness. And I want to stress today that the way I understand it, mental health is the absence of illness, but it is a little bit different from well-being, right? And maybe you can bring your opinions about that issue. A lot of us are functional, right? We do our work, we raise our children, we do what we are supposed to do, and in that sense, we are mentally healthy. At the same time, many of us may not feel in a state of, connection and flow and good direction and meaning. And I'm talking about this as a more general state. And I call that the state of well-being. So there is this, mental health is in a continuum. I see it as a line, with mental health being in the middle as this balance. And well-being, a more self-development towards connection and spiritual openness. And mental illness starts being on the other side, on the other part of the balance of mental health, when certain things start intervening in our lives and destroying that balance. So I really like the metaphor of well-being as the flowing river, and this is a metaphor offered by a psychiatry professor at UCLA, Dan Siegel. He wrote a lot of books about the definition of consciousness and of the mind. So he talks about the state of well-being as a flowing river. On the one side, you have chaos and turbulence. You're being thrown around by life. You feel lost. You feel powerless. On the other side of the river is a state in which you feel stuck. You feel that you're trying to control everything. You may feel a sense of dissatisfaction, but still you cannot change that sense of dissatisfaction. And when you are on the river, right, you are in a state of flow, right, in a state of slow movement towards something that is meaningful to you. So I'm going to talk today about the three dimensions that are really essential to first mental health and then well-being. The first one is personal agency, how we can manifest ourselves into the world. How can we, to what extent we can do the things that we want to do. So you may have noticed many times that if you wanted to do something and you failed at it, you may end up feeling really miserable on the moment. I'm just giving an example, right? And if that state continues for a long time, so if your mind takes over that experience of failure and you tell it to yourself over and over many times, that can turn slowly into depression, right? Because the mind magnifies an experience of failure. The second aspect of mental health is connection and love. We can talk about compassion as well. Is a state in which you are with others, you enjoy their company, you feel connected, you feel strong in your inner world. And the third one is a state of meaning and actualization, when we feel like this is something that is very subjective, right? It's something that we feel. We feel that what we do is right. We feel that our life is going in the right direction, that we are doing the things that we would like to do. So I'm just going to show you the very complex definition of mental health that has these three dimensions: biology, social context, and psychology. Now, I'm showing you this because I would like you to, in a way, to understand that the fragile ecosystem that our mental health is, because we need all of the sides to be in a fairly good state, right? And sometimes you have a change in one of these aspects. Let's say you may experience physical illness, or you may experience the loss of somebody in your family, or you may experience a certain traumatic event. And that can very easily throw the whole system of mental health out of balance, right? So you see how many aspects of biology, psychology, and social context intervene in giving us mental health. And this is I'm talking about the fragility of it, but there is also the strength of it. Whenever you work on one aspect, that will in turn influence because they are in a state of constant interconnectedness. So for example, if you start working on your emotional coping abilities, or if you address your past trauma, let's say you go to counseling and you work with someone, that leads to improvements in your relationships with others, in your health, and again, in your psychological functioning. So wherever you want to enter in that world of mental health as an intentional process, you are, and probably throughout this initiative of talking about mental health, you will have many different speakers who will talk about certain interventions, certain entries, from various areas. So this is the hopeful aspect of of mental health. What is well-being? So I said before that I see well-being as a little bit more than just the absence of illness, as a state of balance, flow, meaning, motivation, vitality, grounding, and connection. So it's a general good state of mind. Of course, we all experience the little joys and sadnesses of our everyday life, but as I'm talking about it as a general state. Now, the World Health Organization defines mental health as very close to the definition of well-being. So they define mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and he or she is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So you see the many different aspects of well-being. It's about self-awareness, about resilience, so coping with the stresses of everyday life, our work, the way in which we perceive our work, and also the way in which we perceive our contribution to the world. And before I go on, I wanted to invite you to give some answers about the first metaphor of mental health as the flowing river. So I will open the poll and invite you to choose your answers of the state in which you feel you are right now. Do you feel that you are in a state of flow? Do you feel that you are in a state of disconnection from others, rigidity and control? Or do you feel that you are in a state of chaos and confusion? So I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer the poll. I'm quite curious to see where you are. So far, I see that a lot of you are in a good state, so that's a good sign. And I think that metaphor is particularly pertinent in the world nowadays, because a lot of us experience this what is called the collective trauma of the pandemic and all the changes that are happening in the world. So there is that sense of a change that we entered, and we don't know what's expecting us, on the other side. And this apparently leads to even more stress than knowing that something bad will happen for sure, because uncertainty leads to even more stress than the knowledge that something possibly dangerous will happen. So okay, I think that many of you answers. I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. You can see that a lot of you are in a state, of a flow, which is a good experience to be in. And usually, when we are in a state of flow, it is more easy to to go from mental health to well-being to even more development of our inner state and our potential. So thank you for participating in the poll. And I'm going to continue with the presentation and talk about the stress mechanism. Now, stress tends to be this umbrella term for everything. There are so many illnesses that are caused by stress, and we just say, well, it is caused by stress, but we don't really understand exactly how and in what way our bodies are affected by stress. Now, we live in a world that is demanding in various ways. We don't live the stresses of our ancestors who have to fend off immediate danger, but we live the pressures of work, the fear of not being good enough, the financial worries, the worries of not being a good enough parent, and so on. So when we experience stress, we react in these three different ways: through fight, flight, or freeze. So the fight is when we try to solve the problem, and this is usually what you see in the world right now. We fight something that is happening to us. We react to it. We fly, like we fly away from it. We hide from what is happening. We retreat. We don't know how to deal with that. And when we freeze, that leads to a sense of numbing. Now, imagine that all the stressful events that you've experienced in your life so far, and even the one that you're experiencing right now, had a certain effect on your body. Of course, our bodies and our minds react constantly to that stress, right? So we try to avoid it, we try to solve it, and sometimes we just become a little bit numbed. Now, the danger that comes with our with the responses, the intelligent responses of our bodies or minds to the stress, is that we lose body awareness, or what we call the gut sensations. We slowly lose our deep connection to our bodies and our deep connection with our emotions. So this leads to a state of disconnection and a state of emotional numbness that is not really conducive to mental health, because the state of numbness is difficult for a lot of people to experience, and that leads to various forms of mental health issues or addictions, because we need to somehow get rid of that state of numbness, or that unpleasant sensation and emotion that we feel in our body and mind. So we create a lot of defense mechanisms that can block experience. So the good news is that we are protecting ourselves. We try to protect ourselves from stress, but in that protection, we also keep out the good things, right? We also keep out emotions that are positive. So we become a bit more numb to love, to joy, to a sense of hope, right? So all emotions start becoming dim and not as powerfully felt when we are in an experience of numbness. And I will ask Tushan to share the presentation with you at the end of this talk today, and then you can access the videos that are embedded in the presentation. Robert Sapolsky is a professor at Stanford University who talks at length about the mechanism of stress, and he has a really funny book called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers, because he's explaining that the animals have an immediate reaction to danger, their bodies get flooded by hormones, they react to danger, then they come back to a normal state. People, on the other hand, they keep that state in the body because the mind takes that state and repeats it over and over. We turn it into a story of how stressed we are, how miserable our life is, how we suffered, and then our bodies are constantly activated in the stress response. So the sources of stress, sometimes we may look at them in the outside world, and sometimes they are already part of our inner system. Now, we are experiencing nowadays a lot of stresses that are more general, as I said before, about the state of the world, the climate crisis, the virus, the fear that we have, both about the fear of the virus and the fear of being controlled. We are concerned about the future of economy, about our financial security, employment, instability, inequality, and oppression. There are so many things that are happening in the world right now. In the inner world, right, we may feel things, as I said before, maybe we feel them in a very dim way. We are not very keenly aware of them, like a general sense of unworthiness or dissatisfaction with who we are, a sense of lack of direction or meaninglessness, feeling lonely and isolated, our experiences of shame of anxiety, of depression, of addiction. So these are stresses that are already in our inner system. And as I showed you before, we are all the time in a dynamic relationship with our environment. So a stress that is outside can become an inner stress, and then our inner stress can create even more stress in our outside world, because now we are so anxious, and then we make other people anxious, and then we make decisions based on anxiety. So it's a constant feedback loop between the outside and the inside. So I want to invite you to another poll, and to see what are some of your sources of stress. And I will launch it to see what causes you the most stress at the present moment. Whether it's the state of the world, work pressures, family conflict, finances, your emotions, your state of the body. That can be illness or pain that you're experiencing. It's so nice to see you voting, because when I speak like this, I have the feeling that, oh my God, I don't know if people listen to me, and I'm not sure if this is happening. So when I see you participating, I'm reassured that somebody will hear me and I'm not talking by myself. So I'll give you just a few more seconds, and would be greatly appreciated if many of you will answer. Almost all of you answered, so 83%. So what I want to say is that in that dynamic relationship between the outside and inside, there is a place of freedom. There is a place where we can intervene, right? So we are not just doomed to be in this constant flow of outer stress, inner stress, and then again outer stress. But we can intentionally start working on our responses to stress. Because according to research, it's not necessarily exactly the event that happens, but our reaction to the event and how we interpret the meaning that we give to it is actually influencing our inner stress. So I will share the results of the poll. It's quite interesting that the most of you are stressed about the state of the world. And then next come finances, the emotions, the anger, anxiety, depression, and finances, state of the body, and family conflict. So it's interesting how we seem to experience the stress that is shared by actually everybody in the world. Right now, the stresses that are caused by the state of the world. So I'm not going to give you a doom and gloom account of what is happening. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is it that we can do, right? So now that we understand the mechanism of stress, like we experience certain events in the outside world, and then our mind takes over and replays it and makes us feel these emotions and certain states of the body that may be unpleasant. We also have various sources of well-being, right? So especially, and this is by a very famous writer on trauma. He's very famous in Canada and around the world, Gabor Mate, who talks about the relationship between traumatic experiences and addictions. So he is saying that our sources of well-being lie in the mind-body relationship and in the self-others relationship. So this is where we derive well-being from. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what is mindfulness. So one of the sources of well-being is mindfulness. A lot of people associate mindfulness with meditation. It doesn't have to be necessarily. A lot of us have various mindfulness activities. They are activities where we pay active attention to something without judgment and without the ability to focus our attention on a particular object. Um, Balancing activity with relaxation is another source of well-being. This is a very simple way to influence our well-being. Um, Resting when we need to rest, even if I know that this sounds a little bit too bold, but even when we feel that we still have to work, right? We could continue working on and on. The work doesn't end. Like I have that experience when I work at university. I can keep reading and writing and preparing courses, but I have to intentionally set a time when I stop, especially now when a lot of us work from home. It's really difficult to disconnect from work and give ourselves the space for relaxation. Expressing our needs is a very important part of well-being, because a lot of our suffering comes when our needs are not acknowledged, they are not responded to, sometimes even by ourselves. Solving conflict, forgiveness, a sense of meaning and direction, love, connection, and creativity. So these are all the sources of well-being that counteract the effects of stress, and they give us, some empowering tools in relation to stress. So further on, I'm going to talk about emotions, because I wanted to highlight today the relationship between mental health and emotional intelligence. And I think it's really important for all of us to develop more awareness of our emotions, and to be able to work with our emotions in a more constructive way. So emotions are sources of information about our well-being. They give us information about that relationship between the inside and outside. And whenever something unpleasant arises, whenever something is negative, we feel the negative emotion. So emotions link the mind, body, and the external world. So they link those three dimensions of mental health that I mentioned, because they are reactions, right? We participate in an event, we have an immediate emotional reaction. That emotional reaction is felt in the body, and it is expressed in the mind, in a thought process. So our bodies tend to be in two different states: either reactive, when we feel that our system is under threat. So the threat mechanism is actually producing a lot of negative emotions, and it can very easily lead to mental illness. We also have the state of receptivity, or like when we are receptive, we are in an expansion state. So experience positive emotions of expansion, of joy, of love. So when we are in a reactive state, we may react to something that we perceive dangerous, like the virus. We may react to something that threatens our construction of who we are. So this is the sense of shame, for example. If we feel that our ego is threatened, we react very negatively, as a shame reaction. We may feel or we may experience sadness, right? Especially through experiences of loss, losing somebody in our family, or losing an opportunity, or losing a dream, or losing a friendship can lead to deep experiences of sadness, right? So these are all emotions that we feel as we, as organisms, interact with the world. So we tend to be in these two different states. Now, before I go on, I want to invite you to do a third. We have only 4 polls, so I will not ask you to do a lot of work today. How do you practice well-being? What are your current practices of well-being? How do you take care of yourself, in other words? It happens many times that self-care is seen as this self-indulgence or selfishness, and we need to give it all of ourselves to our family. We need to give it all of ourselves to our work. But our state of mind is very important as well, because the state we are in really contributes to the way we do things, right? And it contributes to, this is an advice that is given many times to mothers who self-sacrifice themselves for their children, that they need to pay attention to their own needs as well, because otherwise, you know, they will start transmitting their negative emotions to the very children that they want to love and to do everything for. So I see that a lot of you, this is very interesting when I see your practices of well-being. I'm just gonna give you 3 more seconds to see if everybody will be able to answer. So thank you for your answers. I'm going to share now the results. So it seems that the most of you practice walking in nature. So that can only explain why so many of us get depressed in the winter, because we take all this time to walk out in nature, and we enjoy this as a form of well-being that we are sort of deprived of in the winter. Not all of us, the brave ones, they go against the cold and the ice and the snow. So I see that walking in nature, intimate connections with others is another. There are very few people who don't practice any of these. So we all have, you know, different means. I see that some of you practice meditation or yoga or art. So all of these practices create these little oases of well-being in the middle of you know, what we call a stressful situation. So why I'm talking about emotions is that the first step to mental health is the attention that we give to our bodies and our emotions. Just, you know, stopping and wondering, how is my body feeling today? How am I feeling today? We ask one another, you know, how are you feeling? And a lot of us just gloss over it. I'm okay, I'm good. But if we truly pay attention to how and what we feel in our bodies and our emotions, that is actually the entry into our what is called the free will, our ability to intervene in how we feel certain things. In the beginning, like the beginning process is just feeling. And this is why it's difficult for a lot of people to accept that you need to go through stages, right, in order to become really well and become in a state of flow and connect to your spiritual core, for example. So I'm going to define mindfulness. So mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and without judgment. So John Kabat-Zinn is the creator of mindfulness-based stress reduction technique that is now practiced at hundreds of hospitals around the world and in many other locations as well. It's a specific program for developing mindfulness of the body. So it's important to create for yourselves a mindfulness practice. That can be meditation, or it can be yoga is a form of mindfulness as well. It can be art, it can be craft, right? When we pay attention to something in the present moment, because when we pay very close attention to something in the present moment, we disconnect from the constant chatter of our mind. So our mind is a very complex mechanism that keeps creating connections, it keeps repeating stories, and sometimes, as I said before, it recreates stress. But when we connect to something in the present moment, we are able to stop the stress mechanism, become momentarily disconnected from it, and be aware of something that is in front of you. That can be just your body. So how paying attention to your breathing. And one of the essential questions for cultivating mental health is to have this question in your mind: how am I causing suffering for myself right now? So how do I contribute to my own suffering? We tend to, or stress, like I tend sometimes to use them interchangeably. We tend to blame, others for our causes of stress, for our misery and um, state of lack of health. And it is true to a certain extent that there is the state of the world. It can happen, to be laid off from a job. That is an event that you cannot control. But when you decide to take care of yourself in a moment of suffering and not to beat yourself up, I'm just giving an example, then you are intervening in the stress mechanism, right? You are removing yourself from it. So when you meditate, you are paying attention to your sensations and emotions that you are experiencing in the moment. So I advise anyone who would like to create a meditation practice. It's very simple. It's so incredibly simple that I couldn't believe that there are so many teachers of it, right? But it's important to create this special space of being uninterrupted for a given amount of time. Can be 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, or however long you have. And just sit paying attention to your breath. You will notice your thoughts, your emotions. It does not mean that you have to stop your thoughts, right? So there is a cultural myth that this is what meditation is. It starts with observing. You suddenly become your own observer. You see yourself. What kind of thoughts are going through my mind right now? What kind of emotions I'm feeling? And as you develop your observer aspect, you also develop your power, because now you start to be able to influence your emotions. You start to be able to change a little bit your stress responses. Another aspect is noticing the little things that you enjoy every day. We have this story of the incredible stress that we are experiencing nowadays because of the state of the world. But many of us have our little joys every day, our little pleasures, the food, the warm tea, the touch of our children or lovers, hot baths. So all these little things contribute to relaxing our stress response. And noticing your emotions is a very important aspect of mental health. So from noticing your emotions, now I'm going to take you to another step, which is about, once you notice your emotions, how do you work with them? So how can you influence your emotions so that you can become more resilient, you can become more compassionate? So emotional intelligence is our ability to understand and work constructively with our emotions and the emotions of other people. Now, the good news about emotional intelligence is that once we develop more self-awareness, understanding ourselves a bit better, we are also able to understand others a bit better. So it goes like that. Our empathy increases together with our self-awareness. So emotional intelligence has these 5 basic components: self-awareness, getting to know ourselves. Now, in some traditions, this is a lifelong process, right? It's not something that we learn quickly in one session. Self-expression, so how we are able to express our thoughts and emotions. Interpersonal relationships, decision-making, and stress management. So these are all different parts of emotional intelligence. And some of you may be familiar with a very famous book by Daniel Goleman called Emotional Intelligence. And this book actually shifted a lot of the cultural discourse around emotions. And he made emotions be relevant in the world of leadership. So I'm going to show you this diagram because it will help you understand a bit more these 5 different aspects of emotional intelligence. So the first one is self-perception or self-awareness. How do you see yourself? Do you have a good opinion about yourself? Do you have a too good opinion about yourself? Are you disappointed with who you are? How much do you know about yourself? So this one is about self-regard is actually our self-esteem. So how do we see ourselves? Self-actualization is our drive towards actualizing our desires and dreams, and so pursuing what we want to do in life. And the third one is emotional self-awareness, which is what I talked before in being mindful of our emotions. So noticing how we feel in the moment and allowing ourselves to feel. Many times our emotions can become really negative factors in our mental health because we don't allow ourselves to feel, right? We put a lid on them and we try to keep them down, and I'm not going to cry now, but I really feel like crying, right? So whenever we feel emotions, it's important to feel them. I did not say to go and punch people when you're angry, but to feel your anger, right? And to pay attention to it, to how it feels in your body. So the second aspect of emotional intelligence is self-expression. How can we express our opinions? How assertive we are? How independent we are? So this is about how we put ourselves out into the world. So some of us are really good at knowing ourselves, but we are not so good at making others realize how wonderful we are, right? So and I'm showing you this diagram because when I do coaching, for example, this is, we work with a test. So this is that we start with, and then people receive these really long 25 pages about their emotional environment and about each one of these aspects. And then we start working on their lowest aspects, and we try to balance them out with the highest aspects. Interpersonal. The interpersonal aspect is about our empathy, our relationships, so the quality of our relationships, how good we are at communicating, how good we are at creating and maintaining relationships. The next one is decision making, right? So decision making is how we use emotions to solve problems, how we what is the degree to which we understand reality. So this is reality testing, because sometimes we may be so caught up in our world, in our ideas, that we cannot see the truth in front of us, right? So this is an example of not enough awareness of this ability. And the last one is stress management, the flexibility we have, stress tolerance. So how tolerant we are in stress of stressful situations. Some people get flooded much faster than others. And optimism, right? So this is connected to our personality, the level of optimism that we have, and the trust that things will turn out well. So these are all aspects of emotional intelligence, how we can work with our emotions to create a better relationship with ourselves, with others, and to be able to go through a world that is in a state of change, and it engages us in various types of stresses. So I'm going to give you 3 different strategies. Now, of course, there are many, many different things that you can do. And as I said before, if you just take a little bit of separate time every day to be mindful of your body and your emotions, whether it's meditation or journaling, walking in nature, this is very important. How you can start managing the well-being in your mind, right? So just take a look at the stories that you tell yourselves. And this is something you can do after the presentation, because given the format, so it's not like a Zoom meeting where we can interact. Write down 6 current areas of stress in your life. And then, so this is about trying to figure out the stress that is actually created by your mind and the stress that that exists out there in reality, and you need to solve it. Underneath that column, write which ones, so which of the current areas of stress requires action, right? So how can you solve that stress? So I'm just giving an example. For example, I have too much work. Maybe I can talk to my boss and explain the situation and so on, and ask him or her to reduce my load, right? So this is an immediate intervention, problem solving, you go to it. Then right underneath that, stress that needs greater clarity. So stress that you don't really understand if you can change or not. And then stress that calls for a new attitude, right? The unavoidable stress. And this is the stress that invites us to change something about our understanding of reality. So, I'm just giving an example. The fact that we cannot solve the pandemic situation. This is the type of stress that pushes us to find new ways of doing things, to find new ways of dealing with things and of creating connections with others, right? So this is the type of stress that is unavoidable, but it invites us to change something. So just examine your current stories about stress and situations of stress. This is one strategy that I invite you to do after the presentation whenever you have time. So 6 current areas of stress. Which ones of those 6 are avoidable? Which ones you don't really know if they are or are not avoidable? And the stress that asks you to change your mind and the way you think and respond to situations. Now, a second strategy that I invite you to practice is the practicing of empathy. Now, if you look on the internet, there is a movement nowadays with empathy circles where people form groups, in order to practice empathic communication. It's very important to develop active listening. A lot of us want to express ourselves and to state our opinions. We can't wait for the other person to finish so that we can tell them our opinion about what they just shared. I would say that it's essential to develop summarizing and rephrasing habits. These are not habits that we have been taught as children. It came as so difficult for me when I was learning these techniques of communication to summarize what somebody said, because this allows us to enter the world of the other person. So empathy does not only allow us to make better relationships, but also to enter a state of resonance with the others. When we feel that we are connected, we feel stronger and we feel wiser because we put together our worlds, right? And our problem-solving ability becomes even stronger. So try to practice this after the presentation. You can practice it with a friend, but do it as an exercise first, right? Don't try to do it with your spouse at home who will think that you have what happened to you. So summarize what the other person said. So try to listen very closely to what they said and then say, what I heard you say is, and then you summarize that you feel very stressed because of this situation at work. And then validate the other person's feelings, right? So I understand how you feel. If I were you, I would feel the same. Or so something about validating the experience of the other person is really increasing empathy and connection. But the summarizing will do wonders. This is something that I really can speak for, because I've taught many seminars in nonviolent communication. And even when people do it to myself, I suddenly feel, oh my God, it feels so good that people actually listened to me. They understood what I tried to say, right? So try to summarize. And the last strategy that I will present today is the well-being at work, right? So reflect a little bit about your meaning at work that is beyond money. Right? So a lot of us participate in the world of work because we need to support ourselves. But once you pay more attention to your talents and gifts and what you bring to your workplace, and answering these questions, that what are your gifts that you contribute with in your workplace? Do you contribute to the richness of the relationships with your colleagues? Do you participate in creating new projects? And I really like this quote by Maya Angelou. Success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it, right? So being successful is that when you are in that type of work where where you feel good about yourself, and you feel good about your intervention in the world, and also about the way you work with the others. So I invite you to the last poll, and then we'll open the space for the Q&A. And this is a question related to what animates you in the workplace right now. Is it using your skills, interpersonal relationships, learning new skills, developing projects, your contribution to society, or all of the above? So I guess that whoever answers all of the above, you're in a very happy place and in a very happy workplace in that sense. So I invite you to do the poll in the remaining minute or so. And with this, so I'm just going to mention this. Once I will launch the poll. My presentation will finish here. Of course, there are many different strategies that you can use, and today, given the time constraints that we have 1 hour. It's important to start somewhere. So work on your stress responses and on your empathy response, the summarizing and validation habits. Okay, so thank you. A lot of you answered, and I'm going to share the results. I see that it's almost equal, right? So we have, yeah, it is equal, 63% of learning new skills and using your skills. So that's a really good combination. Many of you have the contribution to society, and also many of you have interpersonal relationships. So I think that the more that you can answer, as some of you answered with all of the above, the more meaning you will feel at your workplace. And this really helps us wake up in the morning and gives us energy to continue doing what we do. As a sort of general direction. So I want to thank you all very much for your attention. I'm really, really honored and happy to be here with you. And we have a few minutes for a few questions, probably like we only have 5 minutes. My apologies. So Dushan, if you want to open the conversation about the questions. If anyone has any question, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Bianca. So please, there is a Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom webinar platform. So please feel free to ask questions. We already have one question. So yes, Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So during a discussion, people will not give me time to summarize what they said. We will go back and forth with me summarizing and them saving what they just said, what to do. Okay, so it's interesting that if you have a discussion with a lot of people, it may be a little bit more difficult to practice. But I think that once you are, so this, I invite people to do this as a practice with another person, because once you do it as a practice, you will see the connection that is established as a result of summarizing. Now, during, for example, a work discussion, now I'm quite curious. So what do you mean that people will not give you time? Will they interrupt you if you try to summarize? Will they, are they impatient to listen to your summary? So in a discussion where we are very limited by time, and so you mean both, okay. So they will not give you time to, it means that they probably are not very appreciative of empathy there, because some people are very preoccupied with results and not with how you do things and the connection that is established with others. And in that case, it's probably the kind of situation where empathy can be used only in you paying very close attention, right? And understanding without necessarily summarizing. And you can practice that first in a different environment with people you trust and people who will allow you to practice it. Because if we try to practice it in circumstances where people will despise us for it, that will just, shut off our enthusiasm. So hopefully they will open up to more active listening. Thank you for your question. And I think I saw another question about whether there will be another webinar. So Dusan, I think that you can answer this one. Is that so?
Absolutely. So we are very, very excited and happy to announce that we will have a couple of more webinars coming up. The next webinar will be in November, and we will send you information again for the next webinar that will be held in November. Yes, for sure. Okay, so dear Bianca, thank you so much. This was so wonderful and inspiring. I personally learned a lot. Thank you so much. We are so happy that we had you today. Dear participants, thank you for attending, and I really want to thank our training team members, Amal and Paldon, for their support. Dear attendees, if you would like to get in touch with Bianca directly, you can email her or go to her website, emotionalbalance.ca. Or you can always email our training department at training@mcis.on.ca. In addition, we will email you the recording of the webinar and the PowerPoint presentation that Bianca was using today. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Stay strong and healthy and have a wonderful day. And Bianca, once again, thank you so much for this excellent presentation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being with you today, and I wish you all the best. And as you said, stay healthy and in a state of well-being, in a state of flow. Thank you.
Thank you once again, everybody. Once again, I will share the power presentation, the recording. You can talk to Bianca, go to her website, emotionalbalance.ca, and I will see you back in November. Thank you and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye.